Oh, pirates, yes, they're a rabbi, sold out to the merchant ships. Minutes after they took I from the bottomless pit, my hand was made strong.
All these are criminals, but they are not subjected to public debate, to campaigns, to politicians, to judgment. They're not subjected to the intelligent remedy. They're not subjected to public policy correction. They're not even wept over. They're not even grieved over. There is no Arlington cemetery for these people. They die in silence from cancer and lung disease and liver illness, etc. So what we do is we expand the definition of preventable violence, because what is the great cause of environmentalism? Immediately, it's the prevention of violence. Global climate change is a form of violence. Emissions from motor vehicles, a form of violence. Chemicals in the household, form of violence. Lead is a form of violence. And so once you attach the word violence to it, you have different images in people's minds. They don't seem so distant in such things as climate change and a lot of the jargon that environmentalists unfortunately have developed. The other point we'd like to make is the price structure. The price structure is unilaterally determined so that the costs are externalized on innocent people. That's what pollution is. Instead of internalizing the cost, if companies who polluted had to pay for the health care and the property devaluation and the corrosion outside the company, around in the community, they would say to themselves, well, I guess it costs us more to pollute than not to pollute, therefore we're going to invest in scrubbers and all kinds of preventive systems. And unfortunately, that has not progressed enough, that internalization of cost. The Germans have a law that requires the auto companies to deal with used up automobiles in terms of having responsibility for their proper disposal. But economics as a discipline is horrifically theoretical and empirically starved. And it just so happens that corporations love theoretical economists that have no empirical content. First of all, nobody understands them. Second, they provide indicators and algorithms that serve their interests. And third, they're for sale. So many of them are just for sale, retainers and consulting firms. So what we need is, like Schumacher's book, which is Economics as if People Matter. The other thing that's interesting is the genius of corporate rascals is that the more damage they inflict on us, the more business there is in the economy. Because you have more health care, you have more repair, you have more replacement. The bumper on the car has disappeared in America. It doesn't protect the fender anymore. It's part of the modular body. So if you have a 5 or 10 mile an hour collision, if you had a decent bumper, there would be no damage. Well, now you have $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 damage. You go to the repair shop, more business, more sales, more jobs, more profits. You might be injured. You go to the doctor, more sales, more profits. And so, in a way, their perverse behavior is a source of economic growth. And that has to be distinguished between what we voluntarily are willing to buy. If you're hungry, you buy food. And what we involuntarily are forced to buy by cartels, by fixed pricing, by technologies that are planned obsolescent, and by technologies that, in fact, are very difficult to repair or are very exposed to damage when there shouldn't be any damage. So we want to ask ourselves, in all the money we spend, how much is voluntary expenditure? How much is involuntary? And then we come to something which is very important personally. I grew up as a youngster, and I looked at cars exactly the way General Motors wanted me to. I could pick the model, Pontiac, Chevrolet, Oldsmobile, by the fins, or by the ornaments, or by the chrome, or by the shape of the grille. Real important things, you know. And when I realized that people people were looking at the car exactly the way the advertisers wanted them to look at it, which means style, horsepower, not fuel efficiency, not emission controls, not ease of repair, not safety. I saw how people were being brainwashed. They were being propagandized. They were being denied alternative models of superior performance by which they could compare the crummy stuff they were buying and therefore become dissatisfied, become informed, raise their expectation level, and respond to the better product and the better sellers. And so I developed this concept, which is quite interesting, I think. And that is, it's all about breaking frameworks and having more life-sustaining frameworks. And that is, how many of us grow up corporate? And how many of us grow up civic? And by that I mean, from our 2 years old, we're looking at the world through corporate advertising, corporate slogans, corporate logos, corporate testimonials of prominent athletes, and so on. When a meat company advertises hot dogs on television in the United States, there is no ad that comes on an hour later and says, "Don't believe it, it's a deadly pink missile full of fat, bristles, and low-protein meat scraps." So I grew up corporate, and the whole environmental, consumer, and civic movements are designed to liberate our minds. So we grow up civic. We put civic values, health, safety, access to justice, a kind of freedom defined as Marcus Cicero did. Freedom is participation in power, the best definition I've heard. In participation in the power decisions and the power structures of government and business and labor. And it's important to know that you can test yourself on whether you've grown up corporate. And obviously this is not a randomly selected audience. All right? Let me give you the following words. Crime, violence, welfare, regulation. What comes to mind? If you're growing up corporate, it's street crime, wars, rapes, violence, welfare for the poor, regulation, government regulation. And you'd be right, but only very partly right. Because quantitatively, there is far more crime. Look at the Wall Street crimes draining trillions of dollars of worker pensions and mutual funds and unemployment, 8 million workers. There is far more crime, price fixing, bribing public officials, far more crimes in the corporate arena. There's far more violence in the corporate arena. I gave you some examples of occupational disease. And of course, in our country, a principal promoter of wars, which are big business, is the military-industrial complex, Lockheed Martin. There's never enough weapons in the United States. Never enough death-dealing submarines, one of which can destroy 200 cities with nuclear warheads, multiple warheads. There's never enough for Grumman, for Boeing, for Raytheon. Welfare. Do we need to say more? Trillions of dollars obligated or delivered to Wall Street firms, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. The welfare for the rich and for the corporate far exceeds the welfare for the poor. Quantitatively and far less justified, of course. Far less. And regulation. How about all those fine print contracts you sign? Or click on and you're obligated. You have freedom of contract? That fine print is a form of regulation of the relationship between you and the vendors, the big insurance companies, the big banks, the credit card companies, etc. So it's good to, in your conversations with your friends, neighbors, and relatives, is to shake them up. I mean, when you meet somebody and someone says, how's your social life?